Hey team, and welcome back to the channel for another exciting episode of our Magical Elections video series. So today we're going to talk about those magical election opportunities that we're going to have between our Leo new moon on the 24th of July until the Virgo new moon on the 23rd of August. So we've got a decent number of elections to talk about today. 7 different elections, which is a pretty decent number. And we definitely could have been set up for a way to where we had more talismans available to us during this month. But the building of the Mars and Saturn opposition is really the biggest limiting factor that we have right now at this time, because it takes Saturn and Mars out. They kind of like have mutually destroyed one another insofar as their ability to perform as the ruler of the ascendant. The ability to perform for Saturn because he's retrograde as a planet the moon applies to, kind of a thing. So Mars and Saturn can't be rulers of the ascendant, which takes out Scorpio and Aries as ascendants, and Capricorn and Aquarius as potential ascendant signs. And that's very limiting, especially right now because of where the moon is. The signs that she would be waxing in are Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, which is a sign of Mars that we can't use, Sagittarius, Capricorn, which is a sign of Saturn that we can't use, and Aquarius, which is a sign of Saturn that we can't use because Saturn is opposed by Mars and Mars is opposed by Saturn. So we get ourselves a little bit more limited there because of the signs that the moon is currently waxing in, who their planetary lords are, and their condition right now. So kind of a big mess going on, and I hope everybody kind of is able to maintain their sanity while we deal with the Mars and Saturn opposition throughout the coming days. And we have fully entered what we're calling the benefic summer phase. So for those of you who don't know, my birthday is in August and falls on a particular day to where I feel very comfortable kind of proclaiming the entirety of August as my birthday month. And so we celebrate birthday month here, and in celebration of birthday month, I called in some favors, did what I had to do, and got August filled with a good amount of planetary elections. August is probably our most active month for planetary elections this year. We have October coming up, which is also very active, but August is the best one, where we're going to have a few different options for both Sun talismans, Sun and Leo, and our first real taste of our first real options for Jupiter in Cancer. So, you're welcome. Just the small things. You're not going to get that in anywhere else. You're not going to get that in any other astrological magic content. So here you go. But we're going to go ahead and get started by talking about our first electional opportunity, which is for the 16th mansion. And this is something that North America, Western Europe, North Africa, and Australia will all get to take advantage of. So that everybody should get a chance for the 16th lunar mansion. And the 16th lunar mansion is focused on the claws of the scorpion. And for those of you who are familiar with this transition, the claws of the scorpion became their own constellation, Libra. So we have this association with the scales of Libra, the price to be paid, the price to be received. And so the 16th lunar mansion leans into this with a lot of its financial powers and its financial applications, to where during a waxing moon, we're more likely to use it to be able to to be able to get money coming to us. With the waning moon, we're more likely to use it to get rid of money in some way. So the 16th lunar mansion, here we have a waning moon phase. We're going to use our 16th lunar mansion to help us accumulate better, to help us manage our money better, to help us hold on to it better, and to help us sort of help it grow in different kind of capacities that we might be set up for. So that's sort of what the 16th lunar mansion is about, or what I really recommend using it for. So the North American version of our 16th lunar mansion talisman takes place on July 30th at around 1644, so about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And here we're going to have the moon in the 11th house in the 16th mansion, and she's going to be applying this trine to Venus here in Gemini. Benefic planets are always very useful when it comes to gaining money, to learning how to make money grow. And so this application to Venus is a really great way to kind of help cement some of that energy of the 16th lunar mansion into like positive financial gain. So that's what we like to see with this. That's what we like, this connection with the moon and the benefic planet in these kinds of mansions. The ruler of the first house was Sagittarius on the ascendant, is going to be Jupiter here in Cancer in the 7th. Jupiter is doing very well for itself. Of course, since exaltation, it's 10 degrees separated from the square with Saturn. We no longer have to worry about that, which is great. And it's not afflicted by Mars. The ascendant degree is not afflicted by Mars. And that is really what we needed to move the time around for. That's why the chart is a little bit strange. By that I mean, normally you're probably used to seeing my elections with the moon closer to the midheaven, being right on it. But to do that, if we were to do that in this case, then it would put Mars within striking range of the ascendant by square, which I didn't want. So by intentionally having the ascendant be more in the middle of Sagittarius and pulling the moon back from the midheaven, we're able to make the ascendant safe to be able to use so that it is not afflicted by Mars, which is of course a deal breaker for us here. And that is what makes this election a good 16th lunar mansion for for North America. The Western European and Northern African version of the 16th lunar mansion chart is going to look very similar to the North American version, but with one big difference in that, and can also be true with North America as well, but the further up north you go, the more of an angle you're going to get between, actually you guys can't see that drawing, the higher up north you go, the more of an angle that you can get with your ascendant and your midheaven. And so in this instance, the moon here in the 16th mansion is able to be very close to the midheaven, while at the same time we've got the middle degrees of Sagittarius rising. So in the North American version, because the location that I set for there is further south, it was less angled. And we weren't able to get the moon in Libra with a Sagittarius ascendant on the midheaven. It just didn't work out. That's just not how the astronomy works for that location. Going up further north, you can have that. You do have the possibility of that happening. So keep that in mind when crafting this chart, especially for those of you in North Africa who might have to make your chart look a little bit more like the North American version, since you'll be more similarly situated longitude-wise. But anyway, so moon in the 16th mansion on the midheaven here for Western Europe. This is set for July 30th at 1808, if I didn't say that. The moon still applying the trine to Venus. Here we're about 12 degrees separated, which is getting a little far. And remember, we have our thing with the further the aspect with the moon is, the more likely it is to take longer to make any real difference, to manifest well. So be mindful of that. But Venus is unafflicted. Oh, I'm sorry, we're not worried about Venus. Jupiter rules the first house. We're worried about Jupiter, who is doing well in Cancer, not afflicted by Mars or Saturn. The ascendant degree, by backing it up this way further into the middle of Sagittarius, we're able to keep it clear from the square of Mars for a bit. So this is kind of a good window to take advantage of that if the 16th lunar mansion and its financial assistance is something that you could use, Western Europe and North Africa. So our final version for Australia of the 16th lunar mansion chart is going to take place on July 31st at 13:33, so around 1:30 in the afternoon, and it's going to look much more similar to the North American version based on like the relationship between the moon and the ascendant, basically. So we're going to have the moon in the 16th mansion in the 11th house, applying the trine to Venus, which is now only about 6 degrees apart, so much closer than the other two locations that we had. We're going to keep the focus on the middle degrees of Sagittarius on the ascendant to keep the square of Mars from it. And Jupiter as the ruler of the first house does well here in Cancer, not afflicted by Mars or Saturn. So yeah, the only sort of downside of these elections, well, the Western European version is better. Having the moon on the midheaven, having the moon more angular, is always going to have a much more functionally, much more responsive talisman, which is what you want. But of course, that's not the only place the moon can be. We like the moon on the ascendant here, even though I know that a lot of people don't. I think that that's a big mistake. The moon on the midheaven, the moon in the 3rd house or house of joy, and the moon in the 11th house, which is just kind of an overall great house, the best succeedent house kind of a thing, are the kind of the 4 houses that we tend to look for moon placement when we're making lunar mansion talismans specifically. Other talismans like fixed stars are a bit more focused on the ascendant and the midheaven. You don't really have much wiggle room there. And planetary talismans, the moon can kind of be anywhere as long as she's not, in a terrible place. But we're able to have the moon in a house that we find more or less acceptable here, while applying to a benefic planet who fits within kind of the theme of the talisman, and everything else is unafflicted and safe. And that's what we look for here. That's kind of our big thing, but they're hard to find sometimes. Our next electional opportunity follows immediately after and is for the 17th Lunar Mansion. So the 17th Lunar Mansion is one that I would say is primarily used for protection against thieves. So classically, of course, this is more of like your breaking and entering, your burglary, or your protection of property kind of situation, and the 17th Lunar Mansion can absolutely be used for that. If you want to put it in your car to protect against things being stolen from your car, or maybe your car being stolen, or anything like that, in your home, on your property to protect your home from, from burglary, and your property from burglary or vandalism, also, that can be used. So I'm not saying that the kind of historical usage of it is not totally applicable, but modern times call for ancient solutions. So today, even though we do still have the likelihood of being, robbed essentially of our material goods, what's more likely to happen is that our information is more likely to be stolen. That tends to be how a lot of fraud is carried out nowadays. And so the 17th Lunar Mansion can also be very helpful in protecting you online, protecting your data online, protecting you from identity theft, protecting you from phishing scams, anything like that. The 17th Lunar Mansion can also be very helpful for. So don't just think of it as like a physical defense from theft of physical objects. It can also be helpful for, theft of digital objects or like digital information. So I really like the 17th Lunar Mansion. I think it's a really fun one to have. Just because I like how easily it has sort of moved in to fill this need that is becoming increasingly more relevant. So the 17th Lunar Mansion, we're going to have opportunities for Western Europe and North Africa and North America. Unfortunately, Australia is not going to get an opportunity for this because the moon will have moved past the aspect that we are focusing on for this by the time it lines up for Australia, which is unfortunate, but that is the way that it goes sometimes. Oh, I can't put y'all through this. Never mind. I don't know what I was thinking with this one. Okay, so upon further inspection, there will not be a 17th Lunar Mansion talisman opportunity available for anybody, and we can talk about what happened, where everything broke down. Basically, what I was really focused on was the moon here in the 17th mansion applying a trine to Venus in Cancer, which I thought was very nice. With Venus as a benefic planet being like helpful, stabilizing, keeping everything safe. Unfortunately, the issue with that is Venus, as the ruler of the first house, with Libra rising here, is in a square with Saturn and with Mars, and I didn't see the close square with Saturn. I was a bit more willing to kind of let the Mars square slide because it was separating. Venus was doing nice and applying to Jupiter. It just seemed like the square with Saturn had already happened, and Venus was moving on to something much better, but I totally blanked out on the Saturn square, so that's not very helpful at all. Having the Lord of the First injured like this is not going to provide safety and protection from theft. It's just not. That's not going to work. That's not how that energy is going to work. I had hoped that I could move it somewhere else to try to get a better ascendant. And so we can't use Scorpio as the ascendant because Mars is opposite Saturn. That's not going to work out. But Sagittarius, we could use Jupiter as the ruler of the first house. So maybe we could use something with Sagittarius as the ascendant. But by the time, and because it looks like, and that's why I showed you the results really fast, it looks like the moon is going to apply a square to the sun, which not as good as like a trine to Venus, is still like a very protective, a very oversighty type of planet. The sun helps you stay in control of your information, of control of whatever it is that you want everything to protect, by making it be visible, by making you aware of potential threats and how to handle it. So it's more like a vigilance kind of a thing. And that's fine. That would be great too. Unfortunately, by the time the moon comes to this, it actually applies to Mercury. So Mercury, going retrograde, moves to the other side of the sun, and the moon hits the square of that first. I don't like the moon applying to retrograde planets. They never really hold things together very well, or cause too much problems trying to do that. And the idea that the moon seems to be applying to the sun, but actually hits Mercury first, is frustration. And that is a negative that's a negative. What's my word here? That is, it's not like an affliction to the moon, but it is a negative omen for completion. The moon wants to apply to the sun. That's where she's going, but then Mercury gets in the way and she ends up applying to Mercury, which is objectively worse in this instance because Mercury is retrograde and combust, but also is a switcheroo to such an extent that it counts against the whole situation. So things look like they're going one way, but then, oh no, everything is on fire and backwards, and we don't want that. So unfortunately, that is why, that whole long explanation is why there's not going to be a 17th Lunar Mansion talisman, even though I was very excited for it. So Australia gets its revenge by not allowing anybody to have a 17th Lunar Mansion talisman out of spite. I'm going to blame Australia instead of my own, I don't know, blindness, my own inability to see things, my clearly lack of experience in doing this. So that's no fun. But hey, you know, we live and we learn, and that was exciting. There's the excitement we were looking for. Our next actual electional opportunity is going to be for the 20th Lunar Mansion. So historically, the 20th Lunar Mansion is used either for hunting, where it helps you catch your prey, whatever that is. So very useful for people who are involved in like hunting for sport or just kind of like to do it. Then we've got, it's also kind of generally useful for working with animals. So if you're somebody who works with animals, like in a job or a volunteer role, or if you're like me and are just surrounded by animals, because you can't say no to cute furry faces, it's a curse. Then the 20th Mansion can be very helpful, making animals feel safer, helping you have better like command over them, helping you kind of be more like the position of authority, working with them trusting you kind of more implicitly, or like at least obeying you to a certain extent. So I got a lot of use out of it when I was working at the vet clinic. But also, I like to use the 20th Lunar Mansion a little bit more, I don't know, big picture-y, in that we hunt a lot of things, right? As humans, as people in the modern world, we hunt a lot of things, whether that is kind of being on the hunt for like romantic partners, like searching for, you know, people to date who share values with us, who we're attracted to, hunting for a place to live if you're looking to move, hunting for a new job, kind of a thing. So we have our own quarries that we're after, just sort of in modern life. And so I tend to like to use the 20th Lunar Mansion kind of for that as well, in a little bit more of like a goal-oriented approach of selecting a goal that you'd like to accomplish and working to make steps towards completing it. I think the 20th Lunar Mansion is also very useful for that, for those accomplishments as well. So don't just look at it as like hunting or working with animals and think that it can't apply to you. If you have some long-term goal or some something that you'd like to accomplish or get, then I think the 20th Lunar Mansion can also be very helpful for that. So keep that in mind working with it too. This is something that is going to be available for North America, and for Australia, Western Europe, and North Africa, unfortunately, are going to have to sit it out. But here we're going to have, for the North American version of this chart, on August 3rd at around 3:30 in the afternoon, 1521 is what this is set for. And here we've got the moon in the ascendant in the 20th Mansion, and she's applying a trine to the sun in Leo. Obviously, a really great connection. I love this. I like sun trines. I like sun connections. I like the sun. Breaking news. I like the sun. And so I always really appreciate it when we're able to get Lunar Mansion talismans that have a sun-moon connection. They tend to always do very well. There are very few mansions that the sun could not be used as like the moon's partner for. Very few. And even if they can't, I'll try. So take that. Mansion I can't think of. Ninth? No, I would use the ninth mansion for that. Maybe the 27th, I might not. 27th, maybe 28th too. It might be a little different for that. But I would always appreciate a sun connection here. The ruler of the first house is going to be Jupiter here in Cancer, unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. The ascendant degree is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. So just a really great goal-oriented talisman to go and accomplish. The moon-sun connection is only 5 degrees apart, which is really good. Is the moon moving fast? Wrong button. No, the moon's not moving fast, which is the only downside of this chart, I would guess. So, you know, you do what you can, but this is a really great setup for this election here. And then the Australian version of this election is going to look very similar to the North American version. This is going to be set for August 4th at 12:33 p.m., so in the afternoon. And we're going to have the moon in the first house in the 12th... No. So we're going to have the moon in the 20th mansion in the first house, and she's going to be applying this trine to the sun. I've already gushed about the sun, how much I like the sun. I won't do it again. I promise. Not this video. Next time. The moon is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. The sun, Jupiter as the ruler of the first house is unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. So again, just another really great setup for this election. Really no downside other than the moon being slow. And even Australia has the advantage of the moon and the sun being just about a degree, maybe about 2 degrees away from each other, technically, which is a really tight, really nice connection. If the moon were moving more quickly, this would be like grade A, amazing election. But unfortunately, slow moon. But what are you going to do about it? It's got to be slow somewhere. And we're back because I got sleepy. But we're going to go ahead and finish up with our elections for this, talking about our next election opportunity, which is for the second Lunar Mansion. And this is going to be an Australian exclusive. But the second Lunar Mansion is one that we don't hear a lot from. It is a little specific in how it works, I guess. So you could use the second Lunar Mansion in a waxing moon. Maybe not. Well, yeah, I guess you could. In a waxing moon phase. To get assistance from people in authority. So, kind of your typical, a lot of talismans have that sort of like getting your way through people of authority, getting favors granted by people who are higher up on the chain to be able to get them, to be able to help you get what you need. So that's not so unusual. But what's different about the second Lunar Mansion is that it's very specific and that it is for removing anger. So it is kind of more specifically about helping smooth over a confrontation, helping everybody kind of move beyond a confrontation. And kind of more specifically, I guess, the idea is that you use it to help pacify somebody who you have upset. Somebody, it's like some lord that you have offended in some way. So if you've been in some kind of situation where you've like upset your boss or, gotten in trouble with the law perhaps, then the second Lunar Mansion can potentially help kind of smooth that over. But it can also be used in just regular interpersonal stuff, helping to smooth over fights that you've had with loved ones or things like that. It's helping to kind of like give forgiveness, to foment forgiveness and goodwill in that. So definitely a very useful talisman, a little bit different in how it operates in a kind of very specific way through a very specific action. But still something that we can utilize, something that happens every day as we upset people. And it can be a great way to kind of put a good step forward, and also useful for helping people work through their own sort of internal emotional turmoil and maybe even forgive themselves for something that they have done. So like I said, this is an Australian exclusive for the second Lunar Mansion, and this is going to take place on August 14th at 3:37 in the morning. And here we're going to have the moon in the second mansion on the midheaven, and she's going to be applying a trine to the sun. Of course, the sun is a planet that sort of naturally represents people in authority, so it can be very useful for those situations that are more textbook associations for the second Lunar Mansion, helping to placate somebody in authority who you've upset, or you just want to like make sure that you have a good first impression on, if we haven't quite gotten to that part yet. Then we've got the ruler of the first house as ruled by Mercury down here, because Gemini's on the ascendant, and Mercury's doing all right, not afflicted by Mars or Saturn in their trine and sextile. The moon is not afflicted by Mars or Saturn, having moved about 17 degrees away from the conjunction of Saturn here. Well, I guess we're closer to like here 14 degrees away from the opposition of Mars. And the ascendant degree is also unafflicted by Mars or Saturn. So all in all, a really good setup for a second Lunar Mansion talisman, which is one that it's a little specific in what it does, but it's a really great sort of like silver bullet for getting the job done for people who need it done. So that's all of the Lunar Mansion talismans that we have coming up this month, but we do have one fixed star talisman as well, and this is going to be for the fixed star Sirius. Sirius, of course, is the brightest star in the sky, constellation of Canis Major. And when we make talismans for Sirius, we're usually looking for a couple of things, in that it is a talisman that is said to grant favors from people in authority. Again, we're seeing that kind of consistent theme. This is a lot of talismans do this in the tradition. There's a lot of talismans you can go to help get your way with somebody who can help you get your way. It's also useful for granting favors from spirits, so there is some sort of like magical application to this as well, in that getting blessings from the spirits is something that Sirius can help with. gives power over the spirits of the air, specifically is what the text says. And this has caused a little bit of confusion or like different interpretations of it. One interpretation is that it means that Sirius is useful for weather magic. And this is something that is... Sirius is often associated with different weather patterns, like it's rising or setting in different cultures. So there is some... there's a thread here that we can follow and see for sure. Another one is that spirits of the air is often a euphemism used for daimon, for especially the invisible powers, which are said to reside in the air. So it might be that, and that might be kind of two ways of saying the same thing, because a lot of the invisible powers are in charge of natural functions, natural phenomena. So we might be saying the same thing different ways. Who knows? Certainly not me. And then finally, Sirius talismans are useful for helping to repair relationships. So in some ways, it's very similar to the second Lunar Mansion here, in that it helps people come together, helps people understand one another. The texts especially point out that it's useful for spouses, like helping to repair relationships between spouses. So very useful for those times when things get a little strained, where stress starts to pile up and, you kind of forget each other a little bit. So Sirius talismans very helpful for kind of helping overcome that, and helping partners kind of see eye to eye and understand where they are at and what that means. So I really like Sirius a lot. It's a good talisman to have for any of those reasons. And this is going to be for North America and Australia. Western Europe and North Africa will not have an opportunity for a Sirius talisman. But go ahead and look at our election for North America. This is going to be for August 19th at 10:16 in the morning. And here we're going to have Sirius in the midheaven at about 14 degrees, and the moon is applying to Sirius by conjunction, and also immediately applying to a planet who's of the nature of Sirius. Sirius is a planet that's of the nature of Jupiter and Mars, so we want the moon to apply to either Jupiter and Mars, and here we have the moon applying to Jupiter, so we have fulfilled that requirement. Then at the same time, we want to make sure that the moon is safe. She's not afflicted by Mars or Saturn. We want to make sure that the ruler of the first, Venus in this case, is safe. She's not afflicted by Mars or Saturn. Then we have to keep an eye out for the ascendant degree itself. And this is where things get a little tricky. So I use a 5-degree orb for the ascendant, so you might have to play with this a little bit for your location to make sure that Mars is farther enough away, 5 degrees away from the ascendant to be cadent. So just be mindful of that. If this is a chart that you are wanting to use, check and see how it looks on your location. Make sure that the ascendant isn't too close to Mars, and try to back it up a bit if you can, while trying to maintain as close to the 14th degree of Cancer, 15th degree of Cancer, counting ordinally, as you can. So just be very mindful of that while you're trying to recreate this chart in your own location, about how Mars and the ascendant look. The Australian version of this chart is going to look different. It's set for August 20th at 4:44 angel numbers in the morning. And so here we've got Sirius rising over the ascendant this time, with the moon applying to the degree of the star, and then immediately to Jupiter, who's of the nature of Sirius. And then, just like the North American version, in Australia, we have a kind of a similar situation where Mars is placed just kind of like annoyingly out of range, like just annoyingly out of range. By that I mean it's only really out of range if you kind of set the chart up just right. So be mindful of the ascendant degree here, and that it's moved far enough away from Mars to not be square. Here this is about like 6 degrees apart, which is fine. But just something to be mindful of with it while you're setting it up and kind of going through your thing. Just make sure that you start at a late enough time to where Mars isn't afflicting the ascendant, and you should be good. But now we move into our planetary talismans, and August is a really great month. You're welcome for this. We have some Jupiter and Sun talisman opportunities coming up. North America and Western Europe both get 2 Jupiter talisman opportunities and 1 Sun talisman opportunities, while Australia only gets 2 Sun talisman opportunities. There's no Jupiter talisman opportunities yet for Australia at this time. I'm sorry, I couldn't swing it for you. Things just didn't quite line up the way that we needed them to for everything to work out for Jupiter talismans for Australia, but they get a bonus Sun talisman instead. But we're going to go ahead and take this one sort of location by location, because these kind of happen pretty quickly in succession to one another, and there's not a whole lot to say about them other than just like here they are. So we'll start with North America, and then we'll go Western Europe, North Africa, and then Australia. And our first of the Jupiter talismans for North America is for August 13th at around 3:30 in the morning. And here you can see we've got Jupiter in Cancer on the ascendant joined with Venus here. The moon in Aries applies a square immediately to Jupiter here in Cancer. Obviously, we would prefer a more harmonious aspect, a softer aspect like a sextile, or a trine. Squares are still good. They help us get where we need to go. The ruler of the first house is the moon here. She's unafflicted by Mars or Saturn, 12 degrees past the conjunction with Saturn, and 9 degrees away from the opposition of Mars. So we're doing good here. She's separating from both, moving on. And we have this nice Venus-Jupiter conjunction on the ascendant to take advantage of as well. So just a really great opportunity here for a Jupiter talisman. That is a Jupiter in exaltation and also uplifted by the presence of Venus here. It's just a really good combination here to take advantage of for North America. The next Jupiter opportunity for North America is going to be on August 15th, again at 3:30 in the morning. We're keeping this conjunction of Venus and Jupiter here on the ascendant with the mid-Cancer range rising. And now we have the moon in Taurus applying the sextile to Jupiter in Cancer, who is also uplifted by Venus in Cancer. But this chart here is really like the big one, especially for this month and maybe for the whole year. So you can count on seeing this election everywhere. A lot of people are, I'm sure, going to talk about it. The only downside about this is that the moon is waning, really. But you're going to see this chart a lot in astrological magnetic spaces. You're going to start seeing it throughout the rest of the year, where talisman makers, I'm sure, are going to make Jupiter talismans, Jupiter-Venus combination talismans, whatever they have to call it to make it sound hot. They're going to make talismans based on this election, which is great because it's a really good election to do that with. And, you know, if you've seen the year ahead video that I did back in January for planetary elections, you've known about this chart for a long time. But even if this is your first time seeing it, you still have a good amount of time to get ready to decide what you want to do to take advantage of it. So definitely recommend it if you are at all interested in a Jupiter and Cancer talisman. This would be the one to get for North America and Western Europe. So do it. Just go and grab it. And then finally, our Sun talisman for North America is going to take place on August 17th at 6:31-ish, 6:32 in the morning. We're going to have the Sun here in Leo rising over the ascendant. It's the Sun day, a Sun hour, while the Moon applies the sextile from Gemini here. Mars and Saturn are out of the way, not afflicting the Moon, not afflicting the ascendant or the Sun. The only downside here is that this is, of course, like a 12 degrees distant sextile, so a little far in that, but this is still a really great chart with that in mind. The moon is probably moving more quickly now on this side of the table. Yeah, the moon is moving fast, but we do have a bit of a wide arm here, and it really kind of sucks because by the time the moon gets closer, she will have separated. It's a whole mess, but this is the chart that we have to work with for the Sun in Leo, North America for this year. Now moving on to Western Europe and their planetary election options. Our first of the two Jupiter talismans takes place on August 13th at 11:25 in the morning. These are going to look very similar to the North American ones, but this is sort of the time that they take place in this other part of the world. But here we're going to have Jupiter in Cancer on the midheaven here with Venus. This takes place during Jupiter's hour, and we're going to have the moon applying a really close square to Jupiter here as well. The moon, is separated from the conjunction with the Saturn by 12 degrees and the opposition of Mars by 9 degrees, so moving far enough away from those to where we don't have to worry about their influence there, and they are both far enough away from the square of Jupiter. I guess I should phrase that the other way. Jupiter's far enough away from these squares to not have to worry about being pulled down by them. And depending on where you are in Europe, you might have an easier time actually dealing with the ascendant degree and Mars's relationship with it. So remember, we want to keep Mars 5 degrees away from the ascendant in the 12th house so that he's technically cadent. And here you can see they're 6 degrees, 7 degrees away from each other. So at this time, this is fulfilled. So just be mindful of that, again, when you're kind of casting this chart for your location, because depending on where you are, it might change. It might move around. So just be mindful of that. But that is our first Jupiter in Cancer opportunity. Jupiter in Cancer on the midheaven during a Jupiter hour, and the moon applies the square to Jupiter immediately without any other malefic nonsense, we're going to call it. The second Jupiter election opportunity is for August 15th at 3:25 in the morning, Western Europe, North Africa. And here we're going to have Jupiter on the ascendant here, conjoined Venus in Cancer. This takes place during Thursday night on the wee hours of the morning. Remember, planetary days don't go from midnight to midnight. They go from sunrise to sunrise. And then at the same time, we've got the moon applying the sextile to Jupiter here from Taurus. Again, this is going to be like the big one. So you'll see this chart around. People will be making talismans for it and trying to sell them, which is fine. It's about time they started using good elections. But you can also use this election for yourself. And I really recommend it if you're in the market for a Jupiter and Cancer talisman. This is a really good one. So I misspoke a little bit, and Western Europe actually gets 2 Sun Talisman elections. I didn't realize what I had written down. So the first of those Sun Talisman, because I often feel like Western Europe and North Africa get like the best elections all the time. It really kind of is a mess. I feel like Australia always kind of struggles to get good elections. And then North America is just like, I don't know, struggling to catch up. But then Western Europe always gets all these really good elections. It's kind of annoying. But, you know, what are you going to do? But the first of the Sun and Leo elections for Western Europe and North Africa is going to be on August 4th at 6:25 in the morning. And here we're going to have the Sun in the first house conjoin the Ascendant in Leo, and you're going to want to be careful because this is taking place during the Sun's day. But remember what I just said about planetary hours running sunrise to sunrise. So when the Sun comes over the Ascendant, it will be the next day. It will switch to a Moon's day moon hour, which is not conducive to a solar talisman. So you want to make sure that you're getting your talisman done before the Sun rises. So at the same time, while the Sun is here, well placed in the sign of Leo, and on the Ascendant, before the Sun rises, turns into a Moon's hour, we also have the Moon applying the trine to the Sun, and this is a really great setup. The waxing Moon applying the trine to the Sun in Leo, a really great setup for Sun talismans. These are kind of the thing that you want. There's a lot of, I guess, argument. There's a bit of a controversy about which is preferred for Sun talismans. Do you prefer it to be the Sun in Leo with the Moon waxing, applying the trine, which would put her in Sagittarius, or do you like the Sun in Leo with the Moon applying the trine from Aries, the Sun's exaltation, but the Moon is then waning? It's a bit of a give and take kind of a situation. Obviously, the correct answer is the Sun in Aries with the Moon applying the trine in Leo where she's waxing. Obviously, that's the best Sun talisman that you want, right? So tricked ya. But this election opportunity is available. It's a really good Sun talisman election, a nice Moon trine, a nice tight Moon trine, with the Sun in the first house here. Just like I said, make sure to get it before the Sun rises and switches over to a Moon hour, Moon day. So the final election for Western Europe and North Africa for this month, and the last Sun talisman for them, is going to be on August 18th at 6:25, and it's going to look very similar to the previous one. We're going to have the Sun in Leo on the Ascendant. We're keeping it under the Ascendant because, again, when the Sun rises, the day will change. This is taking place in the last hour of Astrological Sunday, but when the Sun comes up over the Ascendant, it will be the first hour of Astrological Monday, so Moon day, Moon hour, which is not what we want for the Sun. We want the Sun day or the Sun hour. So while we have the Sun here, we've got the Moon applying the sextile to him, and far enough away from the squares of Mars and Saturn to not have to worry about their influence. Cutting a little close with Mars or with Saturn here, but this Sun sextile is very, very close, 4 degrees apart, which is great. And the unfortunate part is this was why we couldn't do this election for North America. One was by the time we got to this setup here, the Moon had moved so far past to be separating the sextile, so that wasn't going to help us out any. We don't want that. But that's all for Western Europe and North Africa, and now we move into Australia to close us out with their 2 Sun talismans. The first one is going to be that August 4th chart at 7:15 in the morning, with the Sun in Leo under the Ascendant, following the same guidelines here. Make sure the Sun doesn't go over the Ascendant, or else it's now Astrological Monday. We want to keep it in Astrological Sunday to be able to lean into that with the Sun. And the Moon immediately applies a trine. The waxing Moon immediately applies a trine from Sagittarius. The malefics are out of the way. And it's just a really good, I don't know, this is a really good chart. It's very simple. And those are always my favorite elections. I feel like the more you have to explain why an election is good, the less it is good. You know what I mean? Just a less is more kind of situation, I think, is really the true key to astrological elections. Obviously, we don't always have them line up very simply, very elegantly like this. So it kind of takes us a bit more finagling to get anything useful out of them. So I'm not necessarily knocking those, but I do think that these very simple, follows the rules, hits it all very easily, very clearly, very easy to explain, are some of the, at least in my experience, have gotten me some of the best results for talismans. So I just really like their simplicity, and this is one of them. So please grab it. Australia if you're interested in a sun talisman. But if you are unable to grab the opportunity on August 4th, the next one and the final one is for August 18th at around 7 in the morning. Again, the sun in the first house in Leo, coming up over the ascendant, hanging on to the last few minutes of Astrological Sunday. Do not let the sun come above the ascendant, or else it will be Astrological Monday. And at the time, the moon is applying this sextile to the sun from Gemini, while the malefics are out of place, or not involved is what I mean. They're not being really involved in the matter. And yeah, just another, like I said, another really simple, really elegant, target planet in domicile or exaltation on one of the two angles, the ascendant or the midheaven, during the sun's day or hour, with the moon immediately applying to it. It sounds very easy to do, to get, but it is not always the case that things line up the way that we want them to. So even though the rules sound very easy and simple to follow, it often is not so easy to find in practice. But that's all I've got for you for this month. A few Lunar Mansion talismans, a fixed star talisman, and then a really good, I think, selection for planetary talismans coming up of Jupiter and the Sun. I'm sorry, Australia, you only have the Sun options. But, a really great way to kind of round out our summer. So please, take advantage of these, especially for those of you who have the opportunity to get the Moon in Taurus, Jupiter and Cancer talismans. That's going to be such a big thing. That's going to blow up. You're going to see that everywhere. So if you can make your own talisman for that, do it. Absolutely do it. It's going to be such a great chart. But everybody take care, and I will see you next time for our Virgo new moon, but before that, for the second part of our Daimon series on the full moon. But take care, and I will see you guys then.